Let's talk about Hatan. Today we have this great privilege of interviewing Ms. Bonnie Glaser, who is the Managing Director of the Indo-Pacific at the German Marshall Fund of the United States. Thank you so much for accepting our interview.
Thank you for interviewing me.
Ms. Glaser, you have actually a very interesting connection with Taiwan. A few experience you studied there while you were 22 years old. That was your first experience. Later on, you went back during 1996 of the missile, the incident that time. So what was your experience like of Taiwan throughout these years, and now what's your observation of Taiwan's relationship with United States?
Well, when I lived in Taiwan, which was 1979, 1980, Taiwan is a very, very different place. There was martial law that still existed. There was limited freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and ability of people to express and particularly publish their own views. But I was a young student who was just studying Chinese. Years later, when I went back, which was 1997, and I think I've been there at least once a year since then, Taiwan, of course, transformed in that period between when I left in 1980 and went back in 1997. And Taiwan has become a very vibrant, active democracy with a whole range of views. And it's facing a much even greater threat from China than it did in the prior years, when the Chinese had very limited capability to influence the thinking in Taiwan, or to use its military and Coast Guard to pressure Taiwan, or to launch cyber attacks and disinformation. So I think particularly the last 5 years, Taiwan's security has become a much greater priority for China, and their capabilities are growing. And so this is now something that I think has entered the minds of the Taiwanese people in a way that didn't exist when I lived there in 1979 and 80. And I think the awareness of the growing threat is a good thing and will help Taiwan to respond, I think, more effectively to the challenge. As for the US-Taiwan relationship, it has evolved over time. There's always been a good US-Taiwan relationship, but with Taiwan facing an ever-growing threat from China, there has been a focusing of the minds and of resources and energies in both of our countries to try and deal with the threat more effectively, to ensure that Taiwan remains prosperous, remains a strong democracy, and that its security remains robust. And there's so much more coordination, dialogue, cooperation between the United States than ever before. And I think that it will grow further going forward because our values and our interests converge in very, very meaningful ways.
Indeed. And can you elaborate on what you just mentioned of China's growing threat? Because you've been to China several times, you have a lot of experience there, and your observation, what are the growing threats toward Taiwan specifically?
Well, first, I think that on Xi Jinping's list of priorities, Taiwan is probably higher, and reunification with Taiwan is higher than it has been for prior presidents. I don't think it's his top priority. I think that Xi Jinping is not going to be willing to pay a huge cost and take monumental risks in order to achieve reunification. So it will depend in part on whether he sees opportunities or whether he is tested or challenged in a way that forces his hand. And that could be something that the United States does, that Xi Jinping sees as threatening the legitimacy of the Chinese Communist Party, or it could be something potentially that Taiwan might do. But that's just hypothetical, because I think that there will be wise leadership in both Taipei and Washington that will not give Xi Jinping an excuse to actually use force against Taiwan. But the important thing is that we have to develop more military capabilities to ensure that we would impose very high costs on Xi Jinping, and not just the United States, but our allies as well, and countries like Japan and potentially Australia and others, I think, can play a very important role. And Taiwan is now, I think, taking its own defense more seriously. President Lai's whole of society defense resilience program is just an example of a series of steps that are being taken to try and make Taiwan more resilient, to ensure that Xi Jinping does not conclude that it would be easy to take Taiwan if he were to make the effort.
Now, we're not trying to make any assumptions, but based on the fact of Trump's first administration, during that time, he was more aggressive toward measures toward China. Now, during this, he just got reelected, and he has spoken some more aggressive measures toward China as well. So, according to past experience, if we can observe what this might impact on China and then impact on Taiwan.
I think that Trump prides himself as being unpredictable, and that he is likely to bring that unpredictability to his presidency. He thinks that particularly when it comes to dealing with adversaries, that it plays to his advantage to be unpredictable. And he has been asked questions during the campaign about what he would do in certain scenarios. He was asked if he would come to Taiwan's defense, and he said, "Oh, I'm not going to reveal what I would do because that would give away my leverage." That makes me nervous because it suggests that there might be some intent to use Taiwan as a bargaining chip. And I think that many people worried about that during the time that Trump was president. And there are probably some people that are anxious that that could happen. We don't know whether, we don't really know what the lessons are that Trump took away from his first term in office and whether he will apply them to his second term. But I think that he, after he had the phone call with then President Tsai Ing-wen, he had said at the time that he might not pursue the one China policy, might not reaffirm the one China policy unless China took steps to address his concerns, most importantly at the time, probably narrowing the bilateral trade deficit and having a more equal trade relationship. And for a period of probably about a month or two, my understanding is that the Chinese did not want to have any interaction with the Trump administration because they made it clear he would have to reaffirm the one China policy. And President Trump did just that, right? He made a phone call to Xi Jinping, probably a bit sheepishly, had to say, I am doing what you want me to do, right? I'm reaffirming my one China policy. So I think he learned that it was too risky and dangerous and wouldn't be effective if he tried to use Taiwan as a bargaining chip. But there are other scenarios that I think could take place. We have seen under the Biden administration, there's been at least 2 instances where Xi Jinping has asked President Biden to do something regarding Taiwan. So we know, for example, when Speaker Nancy Pelosi was planning her trip to Taiwan, that Xi Jinping asked President Biden to stop her from going. And President Biden refused. But that was the first occasion, at least that I know of, that he asked President Biden to do something that related to Taiwan. The second example, which was reported more recently, was that Xi Jinping asked President Biden when they met at Woodside to publicly say that he opposes Taiwan independence. Longstanding U.S. policy is that the U.S. does not support Taiwan independence, but he wanted Biden to say that he opposed Taiwan independence. And once again, Joe Biden said no. So if Xi Jinping goes to President Trump with an ask, then the question is, will he say, oh, he wants something from me. What can I get from him in return?
The businessman perspective.
Right. So there could be some transactional approach. But that, again, all hypothetical. We don't know exactly what is in Trump's mind or what is in Xi Jinping's mind. But one thing I think is certain, and that is Trump doesn't want a war in the Taiwan Strait. He opposes war anywhere. He wants to extricate the United States from military conflicts. Ukraine will be a big issue in Trump's mind. There will be people who come into the Trump administration who want to end this war in Ukraine and do not want to continue supporting the war. Many people in Taiwan have talked about how Taiwan's security is inextricably linked to the future of Ukraine, and that it would be quite damaging if Ukraine lost the war. So that will worry people, I think, in Taiwan. It doesn't tell us anything about the extent of support in the United States for Taiwan. So we could have a very strong support continuing in a bipartisan way in Congress. And I think that in order to avoid any kind of military conflict in the Taiwan Strait, that Trump will understand that he needs to have a ability to make a credible threat to be able to defend Taiwan if Xi Jinping were to attack. Otherwise, rhetorically, it's not good enough. We have to have the capability to do so. So I think that President Trump will continue to pursue many of the areas of security and defense cooperation that we have today with Taiwan for that reason.
So I think that it will be safe to say that the only way to predict President Trump will to be better prepared of his unpredictability then. And thank you so much for all the scenarios that you just analyzed. I think it really gives Taiwanese government, Taiwanese audience a better way to prepare ourselves as well. Thank you for sharing with us your expertise.
Thank you.